Section 18 of Library of the World's Best Literature, Ancient and Modern, Volume 1. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Library of the World's Best Literature, Ancient and Modern, Volume 1. Section 18. Selections from Varia Historia by Aelianus Claudius. Aelianus Claudius, 2nd century A.D. According to his Varia Historia, Aelianus Claudius was a native of Praeneste and a citizen of Rome at the time of the Emperor Hadrian. He taught Greek rhetoric at Rome, and hence was known as the Sophist. He spoke and wrote Greek with the fluency and ease of a native Athenian, and gained thereby the epithet of the honey-tongued. He lived to be 60 years of age, and never married, because he would not incur the responsibility of children. The Varia Historia is the most noteworthy of his works. It is a curious and interesting collection of short narratives, anecdotes, and other historical, biographical, and antiquarian matter, selected from the Greek authors whom he said he loved to study. And it is valuable because it preserves scraps of works now lost. The extracts are either in the words of the original or give the compiler's version, for, as he says, he liked to have his own way, and to follow his own taste. They are grouped without method, but in this very lack of order, which shows that browsing instinct which Charles Lamb declared to be essential to a right feeling for literature, the charm of the book lies. This habit of straying, and his lack of style, proved Aelianus more of a vagabond in the domain of letters than a rhetorician. His other important book, De Animalium Natura, on the nature of animals, is a medley of his own observations both in Italy and during his travels as far as Egypt. For several hundred years it was a popular and standard book on zoology, and even as late as the 14th century Manuel Philis, a Byzantine poet, founded upon it a poem on animals. Like the Varia Historia, it is scrappy and gossiping. He leaps from subject to subject, from elephants to dragons, from the liver of mice to the uses of oxen. There was, however, method in this disorder, for, as he says, he sought thereby to give variety and hold his reader's attention. The book is interesting, moreover, as giving us a personal glimpse of the man and of his methods of work. For in a concluding chapter he states the general principle on which he composed: that he has spent great labour, thought, and care in writing it; that he has preferred the pursuit of knowledge to the pursuit of wealth; that for his part he found more pleasure in observing the habits of the lion, the panther, and the fox, in listening to the song of the nightingale, and in studying the migrations of cranes, than in mere heaping up of riches, and finding himself numbered among the great; and that throughout his work he has sought to adhere to the truth. Aelianus was more of a moralizer than an artist in words. His style has no distinctive literary qualities, and in both of his chief works is the evident intention to set forth religious and moral principles. He wrote, moreover, some treatises expressly on religious and philosophic subjects, and some letters on husbandry. The Varia Historia has been twice translated into English, by Abraham Fleming in 1576, and by Thomas Stanley, son of the poet and philosopher Stanley, in 1665. Fleming was a poet and scholar of the English Renaissance, who translated from the ancients, and made a digest of Holinshed's History of England. His version of Aelianus loses nothing by its quaint wording, as will be seen from the subjoined stories. The full title of the book is A Register of Histories, containing martial exploits of worthy warriors, politique practices, and civil magistrates, wise sentences of famous philosophers, and other matters manifold and memorable, written in Greek by Aelianus Claudius, and delivered in English by Abraham Fleming, 1576. All the selections following are from a Register of Histories. Of certain notable men that made themselves playfellows with children. Hercules, as some say, assuaged the tediousness of his labours, which he sustained in open and common games, with playing. This Hercules, I say, being an incomparable warrior, and the son of Jupiter and Latona, made himself a playfellow with boys. Euripides the poet introduceth and bringeth in the self same God speaking in his own person, and saying, I play because choice and change of labours is delectable and sweet unto me, which words he utters holding a boy by the hand. Socrates also was espied of Alcibiades upon time playing with Ramplicles, who was in manner but a child. Agesilaus riding upon a rood or cock horse, as they term it, playing with his son, being but a boy, and when a certain man passing by saw him so do, and laughed therewithal, Agesilaus said thus: Now hold thy peace, and say nothing, but when thou art a father, I doubt not thou wilt do as fathers should do with their children. Archytas Tarentinus being both in authority in the commonwealth, that is to say, a magistrate, and also a philosopher, not of the obscurest sort, but a precise lover of wisdom, at that time he was a husband, a housekeeper, and maintained many servants. He was greatly delighted with their younglings, used to play oftentimes with his servants' children, and was wont, when he was at dinner and supper, to rejoice in the sight and presence of them. Yet was Tarentinus, as all men know, a man of famous memory and of noble name. Of a certain Sicilian, whose eyesight was wonderful sharp and quick. There was in Sicilia a certain man endued with such sharpness, quickness, and clearness of sight, if report may challenge credit, that he could see from Lilybaeus to Carthage, with such perfection and constancy that his eyes could not be deceived, and that he took true and just account of all ships and vessels which went under sail from Carthage, overskipping not so much as one in the universal number. Something strange it is that is recorded of Argus, a man that had no less than 100 eyes, unto whose custody Juno committed Io, the daughter of Inachus, being transformed into a young heifer, while Argus, his luck being such, was slain sleeping. But the goddess Juno so provided that all his eyes, whatsoever became of his carcass, should be placed on the peacock's tail, whereupon, so thence it came to pass, the peacock is called Avis Junonia, or Lady Juno bird. This historic is notable, but yet the former, in mine opinion, is more memorable. The law of the Lacedaemonians against covetousness. A certain young man of Lacedaemonia, having bought a plot of land for a small and easy price, and, as they say, dog cheap, was arrested to appear before the magistrates, and after the trial of his matter he was charged with a penalty. The reason why he was judged worthy this punishment was because he, being but a young man, gaped so greedily after gain, and yawned after filthy covetousness. For it was a most commendable thing among the Lacedaemonians not only to fight against the enemy in battle manfully, but also to wrestle and struggle with covetousness, that mischievous monster, valiantly. That sleep is the brother of death, and of Gorgias drawing to his end. Gorgias Leontinus, looking towards the end of his life, and being wasted with the weakness and wearisomeness of drooping old age, falling into sharp and sore sickness upon a time, slumbered and slept upon his soft pillow a little season, unto whose chamber a familiar friend of his, resorting to visit him in his sickness, demanded how he felt himself affected in body. To whom Gorgias Leontinus made this pithy and plausible answer: Now sleep beginneth to deliver me up into the jurisdiction of his brother germain, death. Of the voluntary and willing death of Calanus. The end of Calanus deserveth no less commendation than it procureth admiration. It is no less praiseworthy than it was worthy wonder. The manner therefore was thus. The within named Calanus, being a sophister of India, when he had taken his long leave and last farewell of Alexander king of Macedonia, and of his life in like manner, being willing, desirous, and earnest to set himself at liberty from the clogs, chains, bars, bolts, and fetters of the prison of the body, piled up a bonfire in the suburbs of Babylon of dry wood and chosen sticks, provided of purpose to give a sweet savour and an odoriferous smell in burning. The kinds of wood which he used to serve his turn in this case were these: cedar, rosemary, cypress, myrtle, and laurel. These things duly ordered, he buckled himself to his accustomed exercise, namely, running and leaping into the middest of the woodstack, he stood bolt upright, having about his head a garland made of the green leaves of reeds, the sun shining full in his face, as he stood in the pile of sticks, whose glorious majesty, glittering with bright beams of amiable beauty, he adored and worshipped. Furthermore, he gave a token and sign to the Macedonians to kindle the fire, which, when they had done accordingly, he, being compassed round about with flickering flames, stood stoutly and valiantly in one and the selfsame place, and did not shrink one foot, until he gave up the ghost, Whereat Alexander unveiling, as at a strange sight and world's wonder, said, as the voice goes, these words: Calanus hath subdued, overcome, and vanquished stronger enemies than I. For Alexander made war against Porus, Taxilis, and Darius, but Calanus did denounce, and did battle to labour, and fought fiercely and manfully with death. Of delicate dinners, sumptuous suppers, and prodigal banqueting. Timothy, the son of Conon, captain of the Athenians, leaving his sumptuous fare and royal banqueting, being desired and entertained of Plato to a feast philosophical, seasoned with contentation and music, at his returning home from that supper of Plato, he said unto his familiar friends, They which sup with Plato this night are not sick or out of temper the next day following. And presently upon the enunciation of that speech, Timothy took occasion to find fault with great dinners, suppers, feasts, and banquets, furnished with excessive fare, immoderate consuming of meats, delicates, dainties, toothsome junkets, and such like, which abridge the next day's joy, gladness, delight, mirth, and pleasantness. Yea, that sentence is consonant and agreeable to the former, and importeth the same sense, notwithstanding in words it hath a little difference. That the within named Timothy, meeting the next day after with Plato, said to him, You philosophers, friend Plato, sup better the day following than the night present. Of bestowing time, and how walking up and down was not allowable among the Lacedaemonians. The Lacedaemonians were of this judgment, that measurable spending of time was greatly to be esteemed, and therefore did they conform and apply themselves to any kind of labour most earnestly and painful, not withdrawing their hands from works of much bodily moving, not permitting any particular person, being a citizen, to spend the time in idleness, to waste it in unthrifty gaming, to consume it in trifling, in vain toys and lewd loitering, all which are at variance and enmity with virtue. Of this latter, among many testimonies, take this for one. When it was reported to the magistrates of the Lacedaemonians called Ephori, in manner of complaint, that the inhabitants of Deceleia used afternoon walkings, they sent unto them messengers with their commandments, saying, Go not up and down like loiterers, nor walk not abroad at your pleasure, pampering the wantonness of your natures, rather than accustoming yourselves to exercises of activity. For it becometh the Lacedaemonians to regard their health and to maintain their safety, not with walking to and fro, but with bodily labours. How Socrates suppressed the pride and haughtiness of Alcibiades. Socrates, seeing Alcibiades puffed up with pride and broiling in ambitious behaviour, because possessor of such great wealth and lord of so large lands, brought him to a place where the table did hang containing a description of the world universal. Then did Socrates will Alcibiades to seek out the situation of Athens, which when he found, Socrates proceeded further, and willed him to point out that plot of ground where his lands and lordships lay. Alcibiades, having sought a long time, and yet never the nearer, said to Socrates that his livings were not set forth in that table, nor any description of his possession therein made evident. When Socrates, rebuked with this secret quip, And art thou so arrogant, saith he, and so haughty in heart, for that which is no parcel of the world? Of certain waste goods and spendthrifts. Prodigal lavishing of substance, unthrifty and wasteful spending, voluptuousness of life, and palpable sensuality, brought Pericles, Callias the son of Hipponicus, and Nicias, not only to necessity, but to poverty and beggary. Who, after their money waxed scant, and turned to a very low ebb, they three, drinking a poisoned potion one to another, which was the last cup that they kissed with their lips, passed out of this life, as it were from a banquet, to the powers infernal. Section 18.